Well, hey YouTube, it's Elvis Ammo here. Hey, today I'm going to do my best. I'm going to attempt to, I'm filling this pot up right now, and I'm going to attempt to offer you guys a temperature scale as closely as I can to what the Lee 420 pot will give us. For those of us without a PID controller, we may better understand the temperature of our pot with just using the dial. For those of us who don't have one of these PID controllers, what I've done is I've put some markings on the side of the pot here, and these are 1 inch, and then ½ inch marks to give you an idea of what the level of the pot is while we're talking about what the temperature of the pot could be that if we just had the dial set. One of the reasons I'm doing this is I found some interesting results as I was using my PID controller that Johnny so graciously made for us, me and Fortune Cookie, and gifted to us. So what I'm going to do is, as this temperature, right now I have it plugged directly into a power supply to melt my lead, and my lead isn't all melted quite yet. And then I'm going to plug my pot into the PID controller to control the temperature at our optimum temperature that we think is great for casting bullets. And of course, the temperature that we come up with that's optimum is, some bullets we may want to cast hotter than others. For instance, small bullets sometimes require a higher temperature because the temperature of the bullet don't heat the mold as much as maybe a large bullet will. So for all intents and purposes, I'm going to be showing you with a 9mm mold, and we're going to find out what the temperature is. And as this PID controller settles the temperature and starts to pulse, holding the temperature perfectly like this thing does, then I'm going to reach over and turn the dial on the top of the pot down until the pulsing stops. And what this will do is, this is not perfect science, more like fuzzy math, but it's definitely better than nothing to help us understand what the temperature of this pot is if you didn't have a PID controller. All of this will make sense more as we go along. So what I'm going to do is, when this starts to pulse, I'm going to turn the dial down on the pot until it stops pulsing, which means the number on the dial is going to correlate fairly well with the temperature on the PID controller. And then for those of you who don't have a PID controller, you'll have a better understanding of the temperature of the pot as we move along. So as the lead drops in the pot here, as the level comes down, I'll give you the best indication I can of what level it is, whether it's 1.5 inches or 3 inches or whatever it is, and what the temperature is holding at. So my lead is melted, so I'm going to go ahead and hook the PID controller up now, and we'll see. I'm going to run this whole pot, and you guys are going to see what the temperature is as I go along. I'll keep bringing you back, and we'll find out the level of the lead and the temperature of the lead based on the dial on the pot. Okay, so in order to establish a temperature settings guide or a temperature settings scale for the Lee 420 pot. And I know that all of these pots are going to be slightly different. We already know that. So I've let this run long enough to settle in. So the lead is all melted. I'd fluxed the lead with sawdust, and now the PID controller is holding at around 745 within 1 degree. I have the pot set at 745 degrees, and the temperature is holding 743, 44, 45 within a few degrees. And now what I'm going to do is, you hear the pot pulsing. I'm pretty sure you can probably hear that. Hum, 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 hum. So it's turning the pot on and off to steady hold this temperature, which is doing a wonderful job. These things are little computers. So now what we're going to do is find out where on the dial this temperature is holding. Right now I just have it turned up. It don't matter, right? It's just turned on high, sort of. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the dial down to where this pot stops pulsing. And I know you're not going to be able to see the dial, but I'm going to tell you where it's at. I'm turning the dial down, and I'm going to tell you there's a scale of 1 to 9 on here, and I'm going to tell you where the pot turns off, because this PID controller is set to run the temperature on the pot. So what we do is we just turn this pot all the way up and let the PID controller turn it up and down on its own. So here we go. We're going to keep turning it down, and then I'm going to tell you where the temperature setting is on the dial. I'm at 4.5, and it's still pulsing and holding at this temperature. Alright, a smidgen past the number 4 on the dial is where this temperature is running. And the reason I found this interesting is because personally, before I got this PID controller, my optimum temperature setting that I figured runs good is between 6 and 7. I would usually end up going down to 6 as I was running my lead pot. That's where it would end up on the low side. Alright, and I've had questions and comments from you guys recently. I had someone ask me what the optimum setting was on the Lee pot, and I thought, wow, a lot of people want to know where to set this pot. So what better way to show folks is to show them while I'm using the PID controller. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this whole pot, cast some bullets, and as the pot drops down, let's see if the settings on the Lee pot change as well. Does it go below 4, or do we have to go above 4 to hold this temperature? So you hear it pulsing. I'm going to turn it down again. There it is. Basically right on 4. And as soon as I go just above the number 4 on the dial, it comes back on again. So that means that right at 4 on a full pot, I'm holding at this temperature right here. Alright. Now, for folks out there that have been following my PID setup where I hook my thermocouple into my pot, I'm going to show the discrepancy in temperatures of getting the temperature inside the pot and what the temperature is with it attached to the pot like I have it set up now. I'm only going to do this once just for folks that are interested, because I know they are. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug this. And plug this one in. Get all this untwisted. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and plug that in and drop this in, and it's just off the bottom right there, and we'll see what the temperature says as we're reading the temperature inside the pot. Alright, so we're at about 7. See where it stops. So we'll say 775 is where we're at. So about 30 degrees is the difference, just like it was with the other setup that we had in there. So there's no difference between each of the setups that I used to install this thermocouple. Alright, I just wanted to show that because I know there's a lot of interest in that. So okay, so that test is done, and we've established that nothing has changed from the setting that from each of the settings, from each of the thermocouple connections that I have used in my videos previous. Alright, so now we're back with this setup, and the temperature is trying to establish. So what I'm going to do is, we know that on the dial number 4, which is way lower than some of us would have thought, and that's why I thought this would be an interesting video to do. So I'm going to keep bringing you back as the pot drops down, showing you where the temperature is on this setting right here on the dial. And then we'll have a better understanding of a way to establish a guide or a scale for this dial, you know, as closely as we can without having a PID controller. Okay, so now we're down about an inch. So we've run about an inch of lead casting these bullets, and you can see the pot starting to come back down to temperature, and it's starting to pulse, and it'll start pulsing more in just a minute. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to again turn the dial down to where it stops pulsing, and I'll tell you the number that it's at. So holding at around 750, I'm going to turn it down. And I'm at 4 again, same place. Alright, I just turned it dead on 4 and it started pulsing again. So right now at a full pot, and then after running an inch of lead out of the pot, we're still at 4. Okay, so now I've gone about, I'm down to just below the half mark of the pot, about here. So I've gone about another 3/4 of an inch or so since you've seen it last. And the temperature is dropping back down after dropping the sprues. So I'm getting the pulsing, and so now I'm going to turn the dial down and see where it stops again and see if we're in the same place. I'm at 4.5. Okay, so actually I have to turn it up higher to maintain this temperature now. So before I was at 4 and just barely a smidgen below 4 on the dial, and now I'm at 4 and about 1/10. Okay, it's holding right here. Let's see, it's coming down now. Okay, I'm in the same place actually. After it starts to hold at this temperature, I'm just below the 4 again. Just below the 4. Maybe actually a little bit further below the 4. It just came back on again. Right there, turned off, and I'm at, right now it's at 3 3/4 on the dial as it's holding right here. I'm gonna do it again. See if I get the same thing. Okay, it's pulsing. Yep, about 3 3/4 is where it stops on the dial. So at just below a half a pot, I'm actually at 3 3/4 on the dial, which is way lower than most of us have thought. I know, you know, just listening to where people like to keep their pots turned, including myself. So I'm hoping that some of the knowledge that I have now that I have this PID controller could help those of you who don't have a way to control the temperature, or a thermometer to tell what the temperature of the pot is at all. So maybe this can help somebody. But right now, just below a half a pot, I'm at 3 3/4 on the dial, and that is way lower than I would have thought. Okay, so now what I done was I dipped the screwdriver in the pot and I measured the depth of the lead, and I am at exactly, well, not exactly, but just barely below 3/4 of an inch. So I have about 3/4 of an inch of lead in the pot. So now let's see, we're at 738. I have it set for 745. Let's just see, it's right now it's pulsing again. So let's turn it down to where it stops pulsing and see where it's at on the dial again. Okay. So right now I'm still on the 4. It's just barely over the 4. And I was thinking that it would be the other way around, where the dial, you would have to turn it down even more. But whenever it's this low, my fuzzy math and redneck science tells me that the heating element that's inside here is, part of it is just above the level of the lead. Alright, So we're getting some heat from the heating element that's heating up the wall of the pot, and not the lead that's deep down below it, in this case over here. And then this element on this side is definitely low enough to go in the pot, but as it swirls up, some of the heating element is above the level of the lead. Therefore, it's pulsing at, so you know, with this test that we're doing here today, one could assume that leaving the dial at 4 would do it. So what I'm going to do to provide more information is I'm going to do a follow-up video of using the PID controller to tell us the temperature of the lead without using the PID controller to control the temperature of the lead. So we're going to use the dial and see if the dial, if somehow we can give you enough information to be able to turn the dial to a certain setting to determine close as you can to having a perfect casting temperature without a PID controller. So I'm going to use the PID controller to tell us what the temperature is, and just use the dial on the pot and see how well I can do without controlling it with the PID controller. So this test will be concluded for now, and it looks like I'm going to turn this dial again. It's pulsing. It's holding at, you know, it's set at 745. It's holding at 741. And the dial is almost exactly on the 4. And then just barely above the 4, it is hovering around the number 4 on the dial. And that's what we have seen throughout this test. So now we'll want to see if we can hold the temperature to be able to cast by leaving the dial on the 4 without controlling the pot with the PID. So we're going to do a follow-up video. So this will conclude this test. So far what we've seen is the number 4 is the star here for this setting. YouTube, I'll see you in the next video.